Hello and welcome everyone to another session of the Shortcuts Digital Marketing Club on using design for branding. And today I have my co-host Michelle with me and our guest speaker Marwa with us. And I would give you guys the floor to introduce yourself after a little bit before I will just introduce the shortcut and these events. And also by that time we would also get in like more people to join in, and we can also share it in different social medias. Okay, so I'll just share my screen. 1 second. Here we go. Yes. So some of the rules and guidances, of course, the first two doesn't work because we are live, so the webcam and microphone is not relevant. However, try using your headphones to avoid the background noise. Remember to keep your charger next to you so that your laptop or phone doesn't die while the event is going on. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat section or in the comment box, who are watching in YouTube, and then we will try to answer them in between the session. And then a little bit about the shortcut. So we are the largest talent accelerator in the Nordics. We equip talent with the skills and networks they need to become an entrepreneur or work for a high growth startup company. And today we are going to talk about the use of design for branding. And what we do in our different digital marketing club is we talk about different topics around digital marketing. And today we have our guest speaker Marwa with us. And one
Hi,
second,
everyone.
I will just stop sharing my screen.
Yes.
Yes, if Marwa, you'd introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background and how did you end up loving design and
Yeah.
branding, and how did your whole journey start?
Yeah. Actually, I'm a self-taught designer. My background, education, and experience was somehow very different. It was mainly in software development and web development, and I switched to design about maybe 5 years ago, 6 years. So I started by just trying to learn. From any kind of resources I can get my hands on, and bit by bit I start to define more of what I really want to do and what areas in design, because there's a lot of different design areas, and today design, how it is perceived and how people know about, is also very different from 5, 6, or 10 years ago. So it took me some time to kind of define what areas of designs that I'm mostly interested in, and it falls into between two categories, which is branding and design and UI UX. So I'm currently also working as a brand designer and UI UX with Fondion, which is a startup company here in Finland.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all of it.
Mhm. That is great to hear. And I also have my co host, Michelle, with me. So I would also give the floor to Michelle to introduce herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Michelle, and I'm a marketing coordinator of the Digital Marketing Club, and I'm also the intern at the marketing team at the Shortcut. And I'm now like studying international business, but marketing is the field that I want to pursue, and design is the effective tool for me to like deliver what the messages I want to the customer or to the audiences on every campaign, every like social post that I want to aim to. And
Mhm.
I study some design tools like Photoshop and Illustrator. But today I would like to hear more insight from Marwa from the point of view of the brand designer, because brand identity or branding is really a broad like field, and I hope that this session is going to be useful not only for me but uh, all the people who are joining. So thank you
Yeah.
for being here with us.
I hope everyone would learn at least one thing from this session.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
Definitely, like this is also one of these sessions where I also don't have much knowledge about, the design side of things, and I'm also super excited to learn so much from you through this session because it would be really exciting.
Yeah,
So
hopefully.
just to get, into the basic stuff. So what is branding and what is not branding?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of misconception about the word branding and brand in general. But we can start by defining what brand is not. So, for
Mhm.
the very beginning, brand is not a logo, it is not a brand identity, it's not the product or service that you sell. It's an impact, basically. It's how a person got feeling about your service, about your company. It's a repetition. It's something that people perceive based on what you kind of throw at them, and then they start to create this kind of idea and imagination about your brand as if it was a person. So to make it more closer, just so people can really get more understanding, I want you to think about branding as if you are describing a good friend of you to someone who have never know you or met you. So you might start by saying, "Oh, this person, he's very kind, he's very understanding, he's very supportive. I really like talk to him, but he's also very funny and he's very outgoing." So you start to kind of, you have this kind of imagination or idea about what this person looks like, and maybe you have another friend in common, but both of you might have two different idea about the type of personality of that person. So it's something that we build in our head and we connect to emotionally. Think about it like, why would you, for example, use any kind of Apple products over any other products, even though it might be more expensive? Because you can connect more with this kind of company, with what the company stands for, with the quality of the service, with the quality of the production of the products, and you like that, and you feel like this is something you feel proud when you use, you feel like this is something I can relate to, like a tribe. So it takes
Mhm.
some time to understand the concept of branding, but the simplest way I could think about is that if you have a business and you can think of that business as if it's a person, and you try to create a personality for that person.
Mhm.
So it takes time. It's not something that happens, in overnight. It's something that takes really years. That's also why some companies, when they are sold for billions of dollars, huge part of this amount of money is just goes to the like the reputation of the company and the
Mhm.
brand. And this is
mm,
really when you see the huge value of a brand itself alone, like just the name of the brand, what they stand for, how many people know and familiar with it.
Exactly. I think that is like a very interesting take on like what is branding and what is not. And because, like the personification of it, like thinking it as a human is like actually what
yeah,
happens to a brand because people actually relate to people and not, the product. So people
Yes,
have to relate to the company in a way that they would relate to a person. That is a very
yeah,
interesting take. So
yeah.
also, what would you say is the relation between, branding and design?
Uh, well, we define the branding or the concept of brand. Design is the language that
Hmm.
this
mm-hmm,
brand speaks. So you
mm-hmm,
create a personality, and design is mainly the language. It's how you speak, how you present your company, how you present your service, what kind of tone you're trying to communicate with your target audience, which is another
Hmm.
big topic that we will talk about later on. But design is like this kind of tool or language that you perform that helps you communicate directly with your clients. So some of the big brands, they might have this kind of um, like sarcastic tone but serious at the same time. This kind of wicked humor that only few people might get or understand.
Hmm.
And this is the kind of like language that you try to create. Some other
Mm-hmm.
brands might have a way of talking to this type of clients or audience who are kind of outgoing and like likes to celebrate and like to be always out in the in the I don't know, like doing things, activities outside. So they have this kind of language and tone. So it's always like a tool or a language that you use to communicate your brand. So
Hmm.
it's a language in a way.
Yeah, I understand your point, and I really like the quote that design process isn't one size fits all. So, in your point of view, what do you think the most efficient design process until now, as compared,
Yeah,
as in your experience?
yeah. Well, design process is really um, it's something, it's not written on stone, but it's something that you curate over experience and over contacting with like one project after another. There's always like a common steps or stages that you really need to always have it in the process. uh, like
Mm-hmm.
having a good communication with your clients and trying to really understand the business side of what you're doing. That is crucial, because if I don't understand the business of what I'm creating this language for, how am I gonna create any kind of design? Because
Hmm.
what my field is about is communication design. So it's not like artistic design in a way. It's not open for interpretation. No, it's not that direction at all. You actually want to make sure that you're communicating the right message to your target audience. So to do this, you have to really understand the business side. You have to understand the services that the
Mm-hmm.
business or the company is offering. You have to also understand and have a good clarity over your target audience and who are the primary audience, who are the secondary audience. They could be, of course, audience. Or it could be like clients, depending on what is the activity of the business. Do they sell services? Do they sell products? Are they community, like Shortcut, for example, is a community. So who are we talking to defines how we're going to communicate and also defines the process. So in
Mm-hmm.
my case, because I always focus on creating brand identities, which include, of course, the logos and all the visual elements that a company would need to communicate. So my process always start with asking questions, a lot of questions actually, about the business nature, about the reason behind creating this business, what kind of problems are you trying to solve, who are your primary target audience, and what kind of problem you are trying to solve for them. Because it's really important to find this common um, area where what I provide as a business uh,
Hmm.
in match with your needs as a client.
Mm-hmm.
So I might
Yeah.
be, because some companies might be providing, too broad services or too many services, but what they really need to do is just focus and narrow down this amount of like 5, 6 different services to one or two, because that's what your audience need. They don't need too
Hmm.
many things. They just need the things that you are gonna help solve a problem for them.
Yep.
So
So
yeah,
we
so this is,
also,
yes.
yes, I think that is another really key point to think that, like, are you actually being in line with what your customers need, and then going into like what your customers need and matching that with your brand. And also, like, we
Yes.
have one question from the audience from Ananta, that how can we enhance our knowledge on branding, and what are the things we should practice for that?
Yes, that's actually a great question. Because when I started design, I wasn't even aware of like, should I learn about branding or not? Like, I wasn't even know, and the concept of branding at that time wasn't really that familiar as it is right now. But my absolute one thing that I would recommend is to grab some books that specifically talks about the brand topics. Some of the books are like, some of my favorite are one called brand flip and the brand gap. I think these are like, the very good thing about these books that they are very easy to understand and straightforward, so they don't create any kind of confusion while understanding the topic of branding. Another really good resource, which I have also included in the file of resources, is a
Mhm.
channel on YouTube. It's completely free, it has a very, very good high quality of education materials about topics of branding and design and all that kind of stuff.
Is it the School Rocks?
Yeah, yeah, and it's
Okay,
actually called
yeah.
The Future, but on YouTube it's called this School Rocks. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'll share the link also here.
Did my cam freeze? And
Yes,
also,
and
Yes.
you
if you
mentioned,
are in yeah, sorry.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, if you are in liberty to like, for example, if you are a freelancer, try to add
Mhm.
bit by bit some questions that are more related to the brand. Like, try to add questions that are more targeted toward understanding the business side of what your clients are doing. And if you are working in a company and you are in a position of like a brand designer or even a graphic designer, always try to understand why you're doing what is it that you are required to do. Because when you understand, design becomes more like your own weapon that you can point and shoot more accurately, instead of coming up with so many different directions or concepts, and you're just not
Mhm.
sure which one they need. And this is also another reason for understanding, and always focus first on the business side and then second on the solution, and always think of design as a way that solve a problem, like as a tool that solve a problem that you're trying to solve, which is a communication problem.
Okay,
Mhm.
with the message and the language that you have in mind, how can you brainstorm the ideas and make the idea consistent across like the visual channels of the brand? Because you know the brand values and brand personalities and the way they appear need to be consistent in everywhere they show up. So how can you handle that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This is actually like two stages. The first stage is that after I ask the clients like primary questions, we go through another session of brand strategy, in which I focus more in detail and ask more questions about the target audience, what's their needs, what's their problems, about the brand values, and like what is the brand vibes, what kind of vibes you wanna imply or put out there. And after I make sure that I understand all this kind of like elements, and just like I kind of see it in a way, I start building what we call a mood board or a stylescape. And I can actually show you some of the examples from like a previous work.
Yep.
uh,
Do you
Great.
want me to share the screen that you're sharing?
I think it's already my screen is shared, if I'm
Is this?
can you see? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, now we can see. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the examples of what a mood board is. A mood board is simply a visual direction that, as a designer, you kind of suggest based on specific ideas or attributes, or your understanding to the business needs and what or how it might look in the future. So it's a collection of images and colors and textures and photography. It's really everything. The main goal of the mood board is just to set out a visual direction. And this is incredibly important because in our heads, if I said red, as a designer, I can, when I say red, I have like 100 shades of red. But for the client, and especially they don't have this kind of visual memory. So when you say red, they might say, oh, no, 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 red is too strong, or I don't like red, or red is feminine. But how can you find this kind of common ground to say what you actually mean, is by using a mood board, by showing this kind of colors, this kind of imagery, this kind of logo style. So you try to really include as much of visual elements as you possibly can and think of, based on the brand strategy. So as you
Mhm.
can see, every stage always lead to the other one, all the way until you have a final concept of logos that you can present. So this
Mm-hmm.
is usually I always present at least 1 to 3 different kind of directions. So this is one direction, this is another direction for the same business, and you can see and you can immediately tell that this has a completely different vibes from the first one. And this is
Yes.
the goal here. The goal is just trying to test the ground before you actually, start designing anything. Because I have an idea and I can, design 10, 100 different concepts, but which concept is the right one for the company? That's the right question to ask. And in order to understand this and have a clarity on it as a designer, having a mood board help at least 70% of the time for me to narrow down the options and just focus on one or two kind of direction, visual direction to do. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so having a mood board is always something really important. You can make it as small as you can or as broad as you can. It depends on the level of details you want to go. Some mood boards can also include like a mock-up for an applications, some kind of real mock-ups outside. So it really can be very detailed or it can be very abstract. It depends on how much as a designer you will be able to understand and get information from. And of course, your client or the other side also need to have this, like clarity on, okay, I like this direction, let's go with this one, or this direction is the one that the company needs, let's go with that one.
Is this through a like this? Is this mood board through a app or like through a website, or how did you use
Yeah,
this?
I use Illustrator mostly because it's the
Okay.
easiest. But
Mhm.
if you are on Mac, for example, you can. I think you can just use presentation. Sorry, a keynote message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
doing this. But in general, yeah, I use this, and I think nowadays there are also some online tools in which specifically just specialized in creating like mood boards for designers. And also
Mhm.
another very easy way is that you can really create boards on Pinterest. So you can collect images and on Pinterest through and build a mood board on Pinterest and also share it with a client or share it with the companies that you work with. So this is a very easy way to do it and also
Mhm.
free.
Interesting, because like when you were like talking about, like red, like different shades of red, and it was like so true for me. Like I'm into marketing, but that is also something that I don't like get. Like for me, red is just that one red. So like how
Yeah.
much, and I think that it has also been a debate, like do journalists, like overemphasize the change of logos and the creation importance of logos. So what do you think, like how much important is a logo, and how do people go into the ideation process of creating a logo for their company?
Yeah. Well, a logo is incredibly important. Think about logo as we talked about the brand as a personality. We talked about design as a language.
Hmm.
A logo is your ID. Without a logo, you're basically unidentifiable. A logo is a symbol. It's very important because it's a symbolize your business, your brand, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a very simple mark that people can immediately recognize you literally within seconds. So a logo is really important in that matter, but a brand is not a logo, which is really a huge difference between both. A logo is more of a representation for the brand. So it is like the one of the main thing or primary things that any company would need, and the way to do it is that again, if we are going back from picking up after mood boards, after that, as a designer, you would be able to get more idea about what kind of visual direction or visual concepts that you should focus on for the logo. Of course, sometimes you would, like for me, when I work on something, I still want to go back and just experiment with specific kind of concepts or directions. So I always have to be like, you have to be kind of not 100% strict with the mood board, and also open for experimenting like different concepts at the same time, because
Mm-hmm.
mood board is really good for just setting out the general direction, but it's not written on stone. If you are as a designer working on something and you felt like this is a direction and you feel really strongly about it and you can relate more strongly to the brand strategy and everything else, you can connect that, then of course you need to go with it. So it's not a black and white in a way, it's more like a gray area that you need to give yourself freedom to explore and make things messy and just take your time. So after a while you will start to see like a certain behavior that like a certain visual direction kind of reinforce itself on you while doing many concepts. You will find yourself always going back to like one or two visual directions, and
Hmm.
this is where you will start to feel more you know, like strongly like this is the way we should be doing, or this is the concept that we should be considering for the next step.
Yeah.
And
I
what
don't
is, yeah, Michelle, you can go on.
Yeah. I don't know whether you are a perfectionist, but I know that design perfectionism can be a crippling characteristic that drives many designers insane. And do
Yeah.
you consider yourselves as you always want more, and like with the visual directions that can you
Yeah.
stop, or you just like try to make it better and just waiting time on that? It's a good for your like so your work, but at some points like more less is more. So what do you think
Yeah.
about your style?
Well, I like to work in stages. So at first, I allow myself to be incredibly messy. I can actually share with you. That's a good question because I wanted to share
Yeah.
with you really important. Um, you know what it actually looks like behind the scene versus what the clients see, kind of way, because that's answer your question about how messy you can be or should be. So this was
Mhm.
like brainstorming for a logo concept. I don't know. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Could you zoom in a little bit on the, yeah.
Yeah, I would actually zoom out, not zoom in, because
Okay.
I this is not everything. I'm just trying to show you like once we
Hmm.
locked on a
For some reason, we cannot hear you, Marwa. I think you're out of your phone device because now we can only see your shared screen and we cannot see you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can try rejoining through your phone device again. Until then, we also want to, like, from the side of the shortcut, we want to mention that this is going to be the one of the last episode of our this year's DMC session. However, we would love for you guys to be connected with us in the upcoming days and also in the group and be connect. I mean, post there, talk about marketing stuff there. We would love to have different conversations there. And just before Marwa comes back, I would just like to share the feedback form with all of you.
Yeah, it has been so awesome to have 10 digital marketing club sessions so far. We have learned a lot from our speakers and all the participants. We absolutely need your feedback to like create more valuable and better workshops in the futures. And still, let's stay connected with us through the Digital Marketing Club Facebook group to network and learn from your peers and to discuss something interesting about digital marketing.
Mhm. Marwa, can you try speaking and we can see if we, even if we don't see you, we might be able to listen to you. No, your mic is still muted, I think. It shows that the device is not connected, but your screen is still shared. So you can try joining in. So Michelle, I also wanted to like ask one thing to Marwa, and I would also ask you this question. Like how do you feel about, like when companies change their logo? For an example, the recent change of the logo in Instagram. Do you feel like it has any kind of changes in your user behavior? Like, are you using Instagram more or I'm using less? Like, what kind of change did you feel? Because I feel like personally that is a very interesting question, and also the people who are watching, I would love to know from you guys. Like, did it change your perception? Like, let's say for an example, for me, maybe the older visual was much easier to see on my feed,
Mhm.
so I would always like go in Instagram and I would just swipe for like a few minutes. But now maybe it is not much more visible to me, and I don't go often to Instagram that much. So what has been your change?
So you mean changes the logo with just some small changes, or
Yeah, exactly.
that come, yeah, the small changes for the brand identity or brand logo is quite interesting, but
Hmm.
unless like you keep it within your control, I mean that each brand has its own identity for the visual elements, and if the brand change the logo so much, it's gonna be like they are repositioning the brand. So instead, just take the step one by one. For example, for Christmas, you can have some visual elements that illustrate the vibrant vibes with Santa Claus vibes or
Hmm.
something like that, just to just to show that the brand is like promoting its atmosphere and want to like to be engaged with the audiences. Not I'm not advocating for something that big changes like make the brands not consistent in that's just the visual aspect. So changes is possible in some sort of ways, but let's make it consistent and like gradually, rather than like suddenly change their profile logo in one day and then like will make people not used to it like
Exactly.
effectively.
Exactly. I think that is also like Google also does it a lot. Like whenever there is like an event or like there is a celebration, they always change, like add something to the logo. But
Yes.
what I was going into is more like, like when Instagram like changed the logo in the sense that it changed, the color. I think the recent
Yeah,
change is
yeah, the
like.
color becomes
Mhm.
the gradient one, but they still keep like the photograph, like the camera icon, and it's still the same in a sense that Instagram is attached with the camera icon, but
Mhm.
its color, the color can change, but we can still realize that Instagram,
Mhm.
yes, and just do it within like our control. Just let the brand keep it all like genuine identity, not like absolutely changes 100%. So that's my point of view.
Yeah, I think Arif also wrote the same that logo changes for me encourage creativity and brand
Mm,
building, although I agree not too many heavy changes are required.
yes,
Now we
absolutely.
have Marwa with us.
Yes, sorry, I
You
just
back.
my phone
Welcome
died.
back.
I didn't I
Yes,
didn't
it's
put a
fine.
charger with me. I'm very sorry
Mhm.
for that.
So we were just talking about, like the logo changes that, Instagram did recently in their,
Yeah.
the simple like color changes, and like how would you say like that affects like the user behavior and their perception of the brand? And when should companies do it or when should companies not do it?
Yeah, well, it really that's a huge topic like rebranding, and for companies to rebrand their visual identities is also like a very big and wide topic because if you are changing like how, for example, let's take the logo as an example. If you are redesigning the logo or if you are changing like a very small elements about it, usually most of the cases or based on what I always see is that
Hmm.
the audience feedback always in negative because as a human you have this kind of things that we hate change, we hate things that are changed, and we hate things that we once used to know and identify and suddenly it's different. That being said, sometimes the change are needed based on the rebranding purposes, or that reasons or the need for that can be to imply a new image or a new visual style, or to update the current visual style a little bit, so it would look more modern and more current to today's, like today's trends and today's world in general, or to even more focus on like more of a, like a specific segment of audience. So if you
Mhm.
change the logo to be more colorful, or more, like bright, you might also, that might even indicate you're trying to target maybe younger audience more, or
Mm-hmm.
focus, on that kind of segment more. So there's always this kind of a bad or a negative and positive vibes that always come, but at first they get like, the brand gets this kind of slap on the face, like, why did you change this? We don't like this, we hate this. But over time, like over maybe a month or two, people start to actually kind of start to like it more, and accept it more. So it's a change that we hate, but you know with every change always comes like something new as well. So it's yeah, it's a tricky question in a way.
I definitely believe that. Like I was just telling Michelle that, like maybe the new logo, while seeing the new logo and it's not so much attractive to me, I don't
Yeah,
like go to my home screen and press it as much as I used to do before. But look at me
yeah,
now, after 15 days, it's all the same. I'm using it as maybe more than I was using before.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I
Mhm.
don't know if you guys have noticed this, also Google has changed their
Yes.
like complete
It makes me
visual
confused
identity.
at sometimes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's I think the bigger the brand or the bigger the company is, the more resistant people becomes to change, and actually don't like it, because it's kind of like they have this kind of mental relation and association with the brand that has been built,
Mhm.
through literally years, and all of a sudden they feel like this kind of a new change. And what does this imply? Have you take away
Mhm.
something, or have you added something? Like, what's going on? People kind of get this sense of like they panic a little bit, like, what is going on, what is happening, so yeah, it's interesting always to see the
Mhm.
reaction when big company does things like that.
Mhm. And also,
Yes.
like when we're talking about, like all of this design and branding, so how do you measure the effectiveness of your design or your branding?
That's a very good question. uh, you measure the design based on the business goals and based on the target audience, not based on
Mhm.
your personal opinion, not based on your personal taste. And this is incredibly important, um, for both sides. So, for example, in my case, because I always work with clients, I always try to make it clear that uh, this is not about your personal taste. Like you don't necessarily have to choose something that kind of align with your personal taste. It's not about that. It's about what is the company's values, and who are
Mhm.
your target audience, because these are the people you're trying to communicate with. So, for example, if you are communicating, or if your primary target audience is maybe men between 30 to 40 years old, and you as a client are a woman, and you don't like black, that doesn't make sense. Like, your opinion at this point, it's not the most relevant for what we are trying to target, or who we are trying to communicate to. And also, as a
Mhm.
designer, I have to always stay objective about all the the possibilities and all the works that I do. There is no such thing as a designer, oh, I hate this style or I like this style. This is something personal. Unless I'm doing something as a passion projects or something completely
Mhm.
personal, that's another story. But if I'm working for a company, I have to make sure that what we have on our brand strategy, what is like the brand goals or the business goals, and who are our target audience, all this align in one place. So, and
Mhm.
connect that with the visual elements. So if we are
Mhm.
targeting like men who are perhaps likes to go camping, it means that your visual direction need to be more masculine. It needs to be more rough. It needs to be quite raw. You have to engage more imagery and more of a language that kind of this kind of hard, straightforward in a way. You might imply some humor as well. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of you put so many elements on the table and you try all these elements together and you see the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
concerning the target audiences, have you ever like considered the color blindness or dyslexia that your cousin might have? Because I think
Yeah.
it's really difficult things to control. But for your experience, have you ever think about that?
Yes, I actually consider, and I have started to even consider that more while doing like the visual identities. That's why it's also very important that you have, you know, the color version of your brand identity, and then you also have to have another version that is kind of black and white, and see how it would actually like would it still, you know, retain all the visual. Elements to it or the composition to it, would it lose or become more weaker or not, and this is also a very good
Mm-hmm.
you know way to try out how strong your mark is or how weak it can be, is that by taking away the colors and really minimize it down to the simplest simple or form and see how it would look like, see if it's still strong enough to stand alone or not. So one of the things that I also try to do is that always try to do actually is there's I think a site that kind of provide like you upload your logos mark and it shows you how a color blinded person would actually see and look
Mm-hmm.
like, or how your logo would look like in black and white. So this is really important because I don't know how it might look like for a color blinded people, and
Yes.
sometimes there are like you know certain percentages. So some people might have a color blindness like 50%, 60%. Some people have it full. So it's interesting also to see how it might look like from a very different perspective. And of course, if you are presenting this to an audience who a
Mm-hmm.
target or a primary segment of your audience might have, you know, color blindness, that of course this become a main priority for you as a designer, that you have to make this work for color blinded as well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's difficult, but it's some sort of way testament and layer experiment is the thing that's really important when we like to know how user experience our designs and in some sort
Yeah,
of way it will measure the effectiveness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yeah.
Also, do you mind sharing? I mean, I wanted to ask this much later on, but I want to ask it right now because I'm really interested to know, like, would you mind sharing some, like, someone who's just starting out? Let's say, for an example, if I want to start out in design and branding, so what would be, like, where do I start? What should I learn first? What topics should I know about? Like, where does the whole thing start for me?
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Well, if you are like starting design, then you have to
Mm-hmm.
always start with the basics. It means like the color theory, how you apply colors. It means compositions. It means typographic, which is a huge part. What is type? What is the definition of typographic? What is the difference between like fonts and typographic, and how they are made, and how you can use them in a way to deliver message. There are a lot of topics that are kind of basic, or the base
Mm-hmm.
that you as a if you are starting in design, you have to make sure that you learn this. And by the way, it's something that, for example, I always go back to this kind of basics and also revisit them
Mm-hmm.
because I forget too. So sometimes I just feel like I want to refresh more on typographic, or I feel like I'm in a project where I would be using you know, illustrations, and that means I'm using different layers of colors and textures. So I have to go back and revisit some of the basics. So the basics are always there, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
always go back to and always like refresh your mind with it. A good place to start is Skillshare. Some of the courses are free, and some of the courses like for paid membership. Another also again the YouTube channels that I was just talking with you about is really they have, I think they have one of the best content that is free out there. I sometimes I even like I can't believe how this is for free.
Mhm.
Books are incredibly important, especially when it comes to learning the basics. I think books are the best resources. So look for books
Mm-hmm.
about color theory, typography, the design principles in general, like compositions, layout, hierarchy, structure. Try to always put things in context. So instead of just learning about typographic, try to make it within context, like how you can learn about typographic for using posters, for creating poster design. So this way you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of direct your learning, and also you will not gonna feel bored, like, because if you're just learning, especially in the theory part, if you're just learning the things for the sake of learning, then you might get,
Mhm.
bored or distant after a while. So it's always a very good practice that you always have a context of what you're trying to learn for. Like, are you learning for a communication design? Are you learning for building posters? Posters, I think, is one of the great examples because you learn a lot of main elements about design, about graphic design, like hierarchy, like how to use typographic and utilize this in creating like a structure message that has, like an importance to it. How you can use colors and how you can utilize textures. So there's a lot of elements in a poster. So it's also very fun to create a poster, of course.
Yes, getting to know the fundamentals of design is so necessary. But how can you update yourself with the trends or seeking for inspirations? Because we might sometimes run out of ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, about inspirations, how can you like get it every day and make it through your design? It's really cool
Yeah.
to know that.
Yeah, well, inspiration, as a designer, I always look for like design resources out there. So there are a lot of sites or blogs or resources that kind of provide, or magazines that talks about design topics, talks about latest trends. For example, books again is a really great way for giving you like more insights. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to look at. Like a visual design, or something that is graphic and say, wow, this is good. But it's completely like more deeper level that you actually understand how this has been going, like how, what is the use case of the situation, why the designer choose to use this direction over another, what is the process. One of the things that I always like to learn about is the process of other designers out there, and how can I take some of the practices and apply it in my work. um, Another good way is to always challenge yourself, like throw something at yourself that you don't know about, and just experiment. It could be for a personal project, it could be working with a client. Just try to, like push yourself a little bit every time you are doing something new, or every time you're having a new client. Try to just experiment a little bit more, push yourself a little bit more, try to even like surprise your client, like instead of having a logo, say, hey, I did this logo and I also did this kind of set of icons. This way you learn
Mm-hmm.
something new, and you become more flexible with the whole idea of learning something new and failing and try again, and gain more knowledge, and you just became more acceptable to the whole cycle of learning something new, and less defensive when someone throw a feedback on you. So you become less attached to that kind of feedback, because we all learning and we all at different stages. So now I'm
Mm-hmm.
different from 5 years ago, and of course, if another 5 years ago, I would be more different, and what I know now is very different from what I used to know. So it's always like a continuous learning journey in a way.
Yes. Yeah, it
Mhm.
applies to many fields, not only for the ones who doing creative things. Yes. And Smita just have some questions. Do you think
Yeah.
looking for inspiration on the web or social media is a good idea, or is it something that can actually block your creativity? Yeah.
Yeah, this is this is a tricky question, because like earlier in the very beginning of my career, my years, I would look at like this, amazing designs, and I would always beat myself up. Like I would never be able to be there, like how great they are, or that, all this kind of stuff. But it depends on, like, you have to really be more mindful when you look at other, especially other people, like other designers' work, and understand if you like something, that's completely fine. And if you admire something, that's good. It's just more important that you understand why do you like it. What is it that you like about the design? Is it the color combination? Is it the message, how
Mm-hmm.
it's set out? Is it the illustration style? And once you kind of reverse like the whole process, you would actually focus more, because this is more like a mirror. The more you look at it, the more you would
Mm-hmm.
understand actually your own style, and your own kind of thinking. Like, oh, I like bright colors, and I like, strong composition. I like to use only typographic, like in a very big spectrum. I like to use like daring images. So you will start to also, as a designer, you start to understand what kind of direction and what kind of a visual style that you would prefer, or what you would curate more. So whenever you look at any kind of inspirations, first of all, set a timer for that because you can spend
Mm-hmm.
hours. And always try to ask yourself, what is it that I like about the design?
Mm-hmm. And just to go into a little bit of the technical side, would you say, like, what would you say is brand identity, and how would you mind sharing some examples on how they differ from company to company?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a brand identity is like a visual toolkit for a company to use to communicate their messages, whether on social media or on their website, or anywhere, or on posters, any different kind of medium. So typically, a brand identity starts with like a logo family, which is a different kind of compositions of the same logo. So
Mm-hmm.
you would be able, as a brand or as a business, have the flexibility to show your logos in very large, spaces, or very small spaces, digital, or like analog mediums, on mobile as an icon, or
Mm-hmm.
on I don't know, on a big wall of billboard, on the
Mm-hmm.
streets. So having the flexibility in your logo enable you to communicate much faster and easier. So typically, a brand identity would include like the logo set family, the color combinations of the brand, and the different shades and tints, the language of how you would communicate your words. If you are also like a copywriter, that's a huge plus. Like if you are a copywriter who also interested in design, I find this the best combination to be. You can also include like pictures. You can include like use the kind of type or font system. Visual elements also can be like patterns, icon sets. So it's a quite like different from every company's need, because sometimes a company might need, for example, like a stationery, like envelope prints, and need to have like a signed envelope and letters and all that kind of stuff. This is for one company. For another company, their main focus might be on apparel and having like t-shirts and caps, and like all this kind of clothes printed with their brand. So one of the things that I always ask the business or business owners is where your brand will be visible. Like, where do you need your logo to be used in? This way, as a designer, I can actually get more ideas and inspiration as well, so I would understand more where this will end up and be used. So I
Mm-hmm.
can share with you, for example, one. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I will add it to the stream
Yeah.
now. Yes.
Yep, I can see it now.
Yeah, so this is one of the projects that I have done earlier. It's for a Vietnamese brand, furniture, that is based on a family-based business in Vietnam.
I think Marwa's screen, is it lagging?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is lagging. What I will do is I will once again share the feedback form so that it is there, because I've already put up some free resources for all of you who are watching. I've put up some books, some channels, and some websites that Marwa suggested for us to watch. And I think we can
All right.
Yeah,
see her
sorry,
now.
I keep breaking out.
Yeah, now I think now it's again removed from there. But she's still able to share the screen. I think this is because of the two different devices.
Yes.
However, as I was going to share the feedback form, I will just do that real quick.
And to the audiences,
And
if you
all,
have any questions, please comment in the chat function so that we can forward it to Marwa after this. And it's gonna be
yes,
awesome if you can fill out the feedback form.
Marwa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yes, now we can hear
Yeah,
you
so
also.
so this is a brand identity for a furniture companies that were in Vietnam, and they were looking to go to US market, and they needed to rebrand their image
Mhm.
and their whole business. So this is typically like the final presentations that I would present to a client, and I would always start like with the primary logo, which is the main logos that include all the visual elements that you need in a logo. For example, the establishment date, tagline, any kind of other information that is very necessary for the logo to have for this business or for the brand. And after that, I start to break down this into like a secondary logo, which is like an extraction from the main logo. And also
Mhm.
sometimes I can create like a different composition. So in the first one, this is more like a horizontal or like a box like kind of composition. This is more like a rectangle. It's much smaller. It's really good to use like in smaller spaces or on social
Hmm.
media, and you still preserve all the important elements that you would need in your logo, so you're not losing any importance information in that sense. And after that, you have the color palettes. So you have the main brand color palettes, and then you start with the application, which is how the brand is going to use. So this is where the fun part starts, because you start to apply all the visual elements and you combine them together: the colors, logo, pattern, texture, and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, the application was mainly like a price tags on the furniture, or like a brochure that you would use to show off your new line of furniture. So I had to create this kind of different designs, a pattern, a cover. This is also like a business card. So you just start to show your clients how far they
Mhm.
can go and use the brand. So this is what it means to have a brand identity. So it's not just a logo. You don't hand over the client just a logo. You hand them like a complete kind of toolkit
Hmm.
that they can take it and they can get inspired from it and use it later on um, different levels. So
Yes.
I show them like this is kind of applications that you can go and have and experiment with, and this is a kind of composition we can use. And I always give them as much variation as possible. So you have like a darker tone, you have like a neutral tone, you can use your logo this way, you can use it that way, you can add like information here, everything. So this is one of the examples for how you can eventually combine and build a brand identity for a company.
Hmm. And also, Marwa, we were just talking that if the audience has any other question after the session, would you be up
Yes,
for
of course.
answering them? Then we can
Yes,
forward them to you.
yes,
And
definitely.
also,
Yeah.
would you? Okay, that is great. Thank you. And also, do you mind
Thank
me
you.
sharing your LinkedIn here so that
Yeah,
people can
absolutely. Yeah, feel
connect?
free to
Okay.
share. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I will just share it in the comment box. I will also share my LinkedIn
Yes,
to the comment box because it would be great to connect with many of you who has been joining our sessions. And also,
yes.
Marwa, thank you so much for being here. This is actually this year's last session for as a live
Oh,
event. However,
okay.
However, we are trying to keep the group active, so whoever has different discussions, you guys can always come up and raise different topics and talk about different stuff. We would love to discuss about them. And hopefully,
Yeah,
again, we will see all of you next year.
hopefully. Yeah.
Thank you, Marwa, for today. It's very useful for me. And as a marketer, design is like necessary tool to communicate. Besides copywritings and words and something like that, but happens to know this like will give you more chances to communicate with the audiences. So that's amazing.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yes.
been great to talk with you guys and have this session today.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone who were watching this. And please stay connected with us through our website and subscribe to our newsletter. Stay connected through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you want. We are everywhere. So see you all again and be connected in the group. And thank you very much for today's session.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye
Thank you. Bye
bye.
You too.
bye.
Bye. Bye.